One day, 6 months after Jane, who married into a family of doctors, started living with her in-laws, I was relaxing in the living room when I received a call on my mobile phone, which I had left nearby. It had been a while since I last saw Jane's name pop up on my screen once or twice a month, and I hurried to answer the call.
Jane? Hello? Can you hear me? What happened, not contacting me for half a year?
Mom, help me. With a voice so frail it seemed squeezed out, that's all she said before I heard something fall on the other side of the phone.
What? Jane? Jane? Where are you now? At Susan's house?
I'm so starving, I can't take it anymore. I want to see Tom and Emma. Mom and Dad. I barely made out her choppy voice. It was clear she must have dropped the phone, and her voice faded away. As I was getting agitated, my husband Jim, who had been working from home, came down from the second floor. What's wrong? A call from Jane?
Jim! Jane is in danger!
Jim immediately grabbed his car keys and wallet and dashed out, and I hurried into the car while keeping the line open.
Jane, wait! We're coming now!
Despite the early spring chill, we forgot to turn on the car's heater as we rushed over. Upon arriving at my daughter's in-laws, Jim and I pushed our way inside somewhat forcefully. There we found Jane, lying weakly. My name is Mary, 55 years old. I'm a housewife living with my husband Jim, who is a year older than me. Jim and I met through a mutual college friend's introduction. We discovered we both loved movies while having dinner with friends, and hit it off right then and there. Since then, we've watched various genres of movies together, from action to romantic comedies and horror, and reminiscing about discussing our thoughts over meals remains a fond memory. After dating for about a year, we got married. Jim joined a company after graduating from college and has been working there ever since. Now, with retirement looming, he often muses over a drink about how we might spend our time. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad to live a quiet life in the countryside now that Jane has moved out. Jane is our daughter. She was conceived soon after we got married, and despite a difficult birth, she was born safely and has grown up well. I once told Jane about the time when she was born. I shared how the nurses took care of Jane on my behalf, how they made sure I wasn't burdened, and how they helped me. Hearing this, Jane seemed to realize the importance and preciousness of her own life and her mother's life, and she declared she wanted to become a nurse. I want to be a nurse and support babies being born and women like Mom. She was still in middle school but soon started attending a cram school and quickly made it into a selective high school. From there, she relentlessly pursued a career in nursing through high school and college, her determination both heartening and bittersweet for me to watch. Jim felt the same way, and when our only daughter decided to live alone upon entering university, he strongly opposed it.
No way! What if she gets involved with some weird guy? There are suspicious people out there these days. That kind of person is always around. Jim, don't be such a helicopter parent. I hate the idea of her commuting to university by train.
The argument between me and Jane and my husband was truly stressful, but eventually, Jane started living on her own. The night Jane left, only I knew that Jim quietly cried over his drink. Jane spent her university breaks working part-time jobs and coming home. Her innate cheerfulness and positive attitude toward challenges surely guided her on her path to becoming a nurse. Remembering this, I also enjoy a drink with Jim.
That's true. Maybe somewhere known for its local craft beer would be nice?
That sounds good, but Jane complains when we drink too much. Jim says with a wry smile. Jane completed her training, passed the national licensing exam, and became a nurse. Then, unexpectedly, she announced she was getting married. The man's name was Tom, someone she met during her training. Tom had finished his medical training, proposed to Jane, and she accepted.
It's been a while since I proposed, but I'm happy to meet you today. I want to build a happy home with her. Please allow us to get married.
Jim and I were taken aback by the sudden news, but seeing his handsome and straightforward demeanor, I thought he seemed sincere. Predictably, Jim was visibly shocked but weakly consented to the marriage.
I see.
Jim must have seen how well Jane and Tom suited each other, unable to object when he saw Jane smiling happily beside him. Though he didn't cry that night, he definitely shed tears at the wedding. Tom's family comes from a line of doctors, with his father also a doctor, still working at a nearby hospital. He was cheerful and kind towards Jane, but it seemed that Jane didn't quite get along with her Maëlle, Susan and Ciel, Anne. I overheard Jane on the phone once, saying,
"They accuse me of being after their money. Saying I became a nurse just because it pays well and such mean things. Why? Because I come from an ordinary family. It's really rude."
But you and Tom are doing well, right?
Yeah. Sometimes we can't see each other because of my night shifts, but I'm still working too, so it's mutual. We both have the same time off next, so we're going to the beach.
Her voice brightened as she spoke, making me happy and reminding me of my own early days of marriage. Thinking this must be the happiest time for her, I said,
"Have fun,"
and hung up the phone. It's still fresh in my memory when Jane and Tom's daughter, Emma, was born. Named Emma, both Jim and I were delighted every time we received photos of our granddaughter.
Jane's beauty has passed on to her. Her nose is just like Jane's.
Following Emma's birth, Jane became a full-time housewife, busy with household chores and childcare every day. However, not everything was joyful. Around Emma's second birthday, Tom's father passed away. Tom shed frustrated tears at the funeral. He was sick.
It shocked me he kept it from me, but I think he must have been prepared.
That day, the cold rain quietly soaked all the relatives gathered. After the funeral settled down, Susan proposed living together to Tom. "We have spare rooms, and it's lonely by myself. I also want to see my granddaughter Emma." Tom and Jane hadn't considered living with his parents.
"We don't have to live together."
Tom declined initially, but Susan brought up the idea every time they met. Living together would save on rent. Plus, it would bring you a bit closer to Jane's parents, right? Indeed, Susan's house was only a few minutes away by car from ours. Jane and Tom lived closer to Tom's hospital, away from both our houses. Thinking of having a second child and the possibility of getting some help with childcare, Jane and Tom accepted Susan's proposal to live together. When Jane told me this over the phone, I felt a bit anxious.
"But aren't you and Susan and not getting along so well? Are you sure it's going to be okay?"
And is living by herself in an apartment nearby, so it's just Susan at home, and it will be fine. I'll manage. With that, Jane started her life living with her in-laws. However, Anne, who was supposed to be living in an apartment, was always at the in-laws' house, not working, and just living day by day. "Jane, long time no see," greeted Anne, seemingly tipsy from drinking during the day. "And weren't you living on your own?" Jane asked, to which she laughed.
"Is it so strange that I'm at my parents' house? I'm job hunting, so it's fine to be here for a bit."
"Oh, Mary, can you make something to eat?"
"Something simple is fine."
However, there seemed to be no sign that she was actually looking for a job afterward. I was curious about how she was managing her apartment rent, but it appeared Susan was sending her money to cover it every month. Jane became anxious about the future, and her fears soon materialized.
Jane, as the wife in this house, you need to work hard.
Start with cleaning, laundry.
And of course, cooking daily meals is a given for a housewife.
That's how Susan's harassment began. When Jane cleaned or did the laundry, Susan would complain about every little thing, like not wringing the rag properly or hanging shirts incorrectly.
Jane, this is how you fold clothes.
She would sometimes instruct.
I know how to do it.
But your way is like this. It's completely different. Susan would insist, although Jane couldn't see any difference, so she let it go. Regarding cooking, Susan would complain about the seasoning being too strong.
I only eat food that's delicately seasoned and light,
she claimed, even going so far as to throw away soup Jane had made. After living like this for a while, and also started harassing Jane, finding any opportunity to complain.
Jane, the bath isn't ready. It's still daytime. You're taking a bath now? I can take it whenever I want, can't I? You're so slow, Jane.
Such was the situation. That's the situation as I understood it, from Jane's phone calls and messages, but gradually, she complained less, and I thought maybe she was getting used to living with her in-laws. However, suddenly, Jane's communications stopped. She used to call once or twice a month, but then there was nothing. I tried calling several times, but often couldn't get through. When I finally did, Jane's voice sounded forcedly cheerful.
I'm fine. Don't worry,
she said. It made me even more worried, but I didn't want to interfere too much, so I didn't press further. Occasionally, I still received some contact from her.
Why don't you come back here for a bit? I'll talk to Susan. Come back with Emma.
Jane would decline with a tired but cheerful laugh. Issues with in-laws happen in every family, right? I'm dealing with it, so don't worry.
Jane, are you really okay? Your voice sounds hoarse.
Oh, just a little cold. Her awkward response made me feel uneasy. I should go. I need to prepare dinner. Jane hurriedly ended the call. After that, I tried contacting her several times, but I got no response from Jane, nor did my messages got read. One night, while having a drink with Jim, I brought up that Jane had been acting strangely lately. Maybe it's just a coincidence? Wasn't she just sick with a cold?
I wonder if it really was a cold. She always said colds hit her in the nose, but I didn't hear her sniffling at all.
Then we have no choice but to go directly to Susan's house and check on her ourselves. That weekend, Jim and I actually visited Susan's house. When we rang the doorbell, Jane came out to greet us, and we were happy to see her again after several months. Her face, though, seemed thinner than before, and her smile quickly turned to darkness. When Susan and appeared behind her.
What is this? Showing up unannounced.
Don't you have any common sense? Poor Jane, raised by such people. And said with a laugh, but Susan, without reprimanding her, was desperate to get us off the property.
Please leave. I'll call the police for trespassing if you don't.
Susan, furiously trying to shoo us away with a broom, was visibly angry. Despite being chased off, Jim and I returned to our car, feeling that something was wrong.
Was Jane always that thin? She used to complain about gaining a little weight.
Is she not being fed properly? Could it be abuse?
Is that even possible?
We went to the police to discuss our concerns, but were told that without seeing Jane or witnessing abuse, they couldn't do anything.
It'll be too late if we wait until something happens.
I insisted, but Jim stopped me, and we went home for the day. Half a year passed in this state when one day, as I was relaxing in the living room, my mobile phone rang with a call from Jane. I hurried to answer it.
Jane? Hello? Can you hear me? What happened, not contacting me for half a year?
Mom. Jane's voice was a weak groan. Help me. After saying just that in a weakened voice, I heard something fall.
What? Jane? Jane? Where are you now? At Susan's house?
I'm so starving, I can't take it anymore. I want to see Tom and Emma. Mom and Dad. I barely made out her choppy voice. She must have dropped the phone, and her voice faded away. As I was getting agitated, Jim, who had been working from home, came down from the second floor. What's wrong? A call from Jane?
Jim! Jane is in danger!
Jim immediately grabbed his car keys and wallet, and I hurried into the car while keeping the line open.
Jane, wait! We're coming now!
Forgetting to turn on the car's heater in the slight chill, we rushed over. When we rang Susan's house's doorbell, Susan came out and was startled to see us.
You two again.
Expecting to be turned away again, we entered the house before Susan could finish speaking. Who is it? One night, slightly tipsy and blocked our way, but Jim and I pushed past her and proceeded inside without hesitation.
Jane! Where are you, Jane? You're here, right? And Emma? We have to take Emma back too. Emma?
Susan and followed us, but we didn't care.
What's the meaning of this? Stop it, enough.
While I was calling for Emma, she noticed the commotion and came out. I'm here.
Good. Where's Mom? Do you know where she is?
Over there. Emma led us with her small steps to Jane's room. Along the way, Mom looking forward to seeing Grandma and Grandpa, Emma said. Puzzled, we followed her and arrived in front of a locked storage room. It was a simple lock added afterward, and Jim and I broke in.
Jane!
I screamed. Jane was lying weakly inside, her cheeks hollow, her limbs thin, clearly not having eaten for days. Jane couldn't respond, only occasionally moaning weakly.
I'm calling for an ambulance.
You're overreacting. I attended to Jane while Jim called the police and ambulance. After the call, Jim confronted Susan.
Why would you do this?
The answer came not from Susan or Anne, but from Emma standing nearby. It's discipline, she said.
Discipline. This isn't discipline.
Soon the ambulance arrived, and Jim and I explained to the paramedics that Jane was too weak to speak, had been left in the storage, and likely hadn't eaten properly. Sensing the severity from Jane's frail condition, a paramedic said, Understood. We'll transport her to the hospital immediately, and asked me to accompany them.
Wait. Her husband is a doctor. He works at...
I mentioned the hospital name, asking if they could take her there. The paramedics contacted the hospital, and fortunately, they agreed to accept her, so the ambulance quickly set off. Siren blaring towards the hospital. Arriving at the hospital, Tom, having been informed of the emergency admission, was waiting, and I confronted him in a near frenzy.
What have you done?
Confused, Tom was approached by nurses trying to separate us. Amidst the commotion, with people watching, I didn't hold back in telling Tom about Jane's condition.
I will never forgive this. Please wait. This is the first time I'm hearing of this. I thought she seemed a bit off lately, but she always laughed it off, saying she was fine.
Tom often stayed away from home overnight due to night shifts and helping at associated hospitals, so he rarely saw Jane and had left her care entirely to Susan and Anne. Eventually, Jane had to be hospitalized for a while. Tom, angry at himself for not noticing and at Susan and Anne for their actions, informed Jane's doctor of the seriousness of the situation and decided to call the police. The next day, when Jim visited Jane's hospital room, she was able to speak, though she looked painfully frail with an 4 drip. Regretting not taking her out of that house sooner and apologizing for not noticing her situation. We listened as Jane recounted everything. It started with verbal abuse and escalated to taking away her mobile phone and computer, becoming increasingly malicious. Yet Jane, with her inherent brightness and positivity, tried to endure, smiling at Tom whenever he came home late or after a long absence. However, this seemed to irritate Susan and Anne, whose harassment escalated when Tom was frequently away at night shifts or training sessions. Jane didn't seek Tom's help because Susan had threatened her not to tell.
If I said anything, they'd bully Emma.
Indeed, there were instances where Emma was pinched on the cheek or deliberately not given food. Jane had reportedly pleaded,
"I'll endure it, so please don't hurt Emma,"
asking them not to lay a hand on Emma. For 6 months, Jane and Emma were separated, with Jane only receiving food and water once a day and kept in a storage room otherwise. Jane attempted to escape once but was caught by and at the entrance and severely beaten, making further escape attempts impossible. Fortunately, she had managed to keep an old mobile phone and charger hidden, which was not taken from her. Jane documented everything that happened, including daily abuses, in videos and messages at night.
"Where is it?" "Under the bed in the storage room where I was."
Based on this information, the police later recovered the evidence. The police, using this evidence, arrested Susan and Anne for imprisoning Jane over a long period. This incident caused Jim to lose trust in Tom, and for the time being, Emma would stay with Jim and me.
"We can't let Emma suffer the same fate as Jane. We'll be watching you closely from now on." "Yes. I'm sorry. I won't make excuses for not realizing the terrible things my mother and were doing to Jane while I was away."
Tom deeply apologized. As for Jane, since her hospitalization, she gradually recovered both physically and mentally. Each visit to the hospital showed her cheeks becoming fuller, and she laughed happily about gaining weight on her upper arms. She was discharged about 3 months later, into the warm sunlight that felt a bit too bright. After her discharge, Jane returned to her parents' home, where she, Jim, Jane, and Emma began living together. We had assumed she would certainly divorce after such an ordeal, but after Emma had gone to bed one night, Jane said something unexpected. "You know, I'm not thinking about getting a divorce." Jim and I were shocked. Perhaps seeing our confusion, Jane slowly explained. "At first, I was fed up with Susan and thought about divorcing him. But Tom was always kind and warm. During her hospital stay, Tom visited her daily after work, apologizing on behalf of his mother and sister, and promised never to let such a thing happen again. 'I will protect you,' he assured. He also worked to ensure Susan and were punished by gathering evidence at home and getting his colleagues to write thorough medical reports. Tom talked about cutting ties with his family and said he'd follow any conditions my parents set until they could forgive him," Jane said.
"Do you believe him?"
"I do. That's why I really want to live with Tom and Emma again." Jane looked directly into Jim's eyes as she spoke, her words and expression showing no doubt. However, Jim and I couldn't easily accept this and told Tom that we opposed the idea of Jane and Emma living with him for the time being, even after arranging a meeting to discuss it. Surprisingly, Tom accepted our stipulation without argument. "I understand both Jane's and your feelings. I've done something unforgivable and will accept any punishment until I can live with Jane and Emma again." Later, Jim retired, and we moved to the countryside with Jane and Emma. Something we had talked about doing after retirement, but never expected to happen so soon.
"Isn't this a bit hasty?"
I asked Jim before moving, but he shook his head.
I can't settle down knowing their house is nearby.
Meanwhile, the young couple continued to persuade Jim to let them live as a family again. Desperate for approval, Tom heard from Jane about a closed clinic in our new town and immediately came to check it out. It was a small clinic, previously run by an elderly doctor specializing in internal medicine and pulmonology, retiring due to age. The clinic was conveniently located near a bus stop and had good access to the train station, with most facilities already in place. Tom, who had specialized in internal medicine, decided to leave his previous hospital, purchased the closed clinic, and successfully opened his own practice. At the clinic, Jane returned to work as a nurse, starting her days early and working reduced hours so she could be home by the evening. The clinic is so close to home that it's only a 5-minute drive away. On the clinic's days off, Tom comes over, and we spend time dining and playing with Emma, Jane, and me. Jim still keeps a stern eye on Tom, but lately, he's started to watch over him more gently. I hope for a reconciliation between Jim and them soon and showcase my cooking skills on weekends.
How's it going lately?
Jim asks gruffly, but his voice carries a hint of kindness.
It's nice being with Jane and Emma. And being able to drink with Jim.
Don't get too comfortable. Jim and Tom have even started to enjoy a drink together in the evenings.
Grandma, this is Mia.
Kevin's girlfriend, Mia, seemingly quiet woman with fair skin, greeted us with a nervous smile. I quickly ushered them inside the house. It was for a meet and greet that Kevin had brought her over, and my daughter-in-law, Chloe, was in good spirits, eagerly asking how the two had met.
Evelyn, hurry up and serve them some coffee.
Chloe's mood had soured just minutes earlier. The reason was Kevin had first told his parents that Mia was pregnant. I was so shocked I lost my voice. Chloe showed some discomfort at the fact they were having a shotgun wedding.
We're serious about making this work. We know we're young, but please, allow us to marry.
Both were sincerely asking for their parents' permission to marry. As a grandmother, I realized it was not my place to comment and silently watched, moved by their demeanor. However, Chloe made a visibly displeased face and waved her hand in front of her own face.
A shotgun wedding is so tacky. Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you have to marry, right? Isn't that right, Evelyn?
Suddenly turned to me.
What?
I let out, as Chloe directed a sardonic smile my way.
Yes, it's true. Just because there's a baby on the way doesn't necessarily mean marriage is a must.
Kevin looked momentarily saddened. I had anticipated such a reaction. But you two are choosing to move forward because of this baby. Whatever the case, it's something Kevin and Mia have decided together. No one else has the right to object. Maybe what we can do, Chloe, is to support them, don't you think? Chloe downed her mug of coffee in one go. Evelyn, get me a refill, please. She handed it over, then crossed her arms and sighed.
Well, opposing it is futile anyway. So, when are you planning the wedding? What? Oh, considering Mia's condition, we'd like to do it sooner rather than later. So, this means we're finally getting a break from parenting.
Chloe said reflectively, then turned towards me in the kitchen.
Now that we're going to be living as a family, we won't be needing a housekeeper anymore.
Can you leave?
What?
The sudden words from Chloe took everyone by surprise. My son Charles, Kevin, and Mia were all left speechless.
What am I supposed to do now?
My name is Evelyn. I'm a 70-year-old grandmother. I live with my only son Charles, his wife Chloe, and their family in a 2-generation home. Though it may seem happy from the outside, I've felt somewhat downcast since losing my husband a few years ago. Chloe, my son's wife, is outspoken and tends to say whatever comes to her mind, and while we're not on bad terms, I've felt her using me for convenience. When Chloe goes out with friends, she takes for granted that I'll do the household chores and even asks me to drive her to the station. Chloe seems to think living together in a two-generation home is her way of showing filial piety. Contrary to my wish for a quiet life after my husband's death, I find myself entangled in a complicated situation.
Come on, get up already.
From the bedroom of my son and his wife, Chloe's almost shrieking voice can be heard. Ah, she seems to be in a bad mood again. Though Charles was working till late last night, he was woken up at the usual time on his day off and hurried to get ready to go out. I quietly spoke to Charles when I encountered him in the washroom. "Charles, are you okay?" "I'm fine, got about 5 hours of sleep." Charles smiled gently at me through the mirror while drying his face with a towel. Lately, Charles has been looking pale, and I've been worried. Despite my concerns, Charles would brush it off with, "I'm fine," which was something my husband used to say. He kept working until one day, he suddenly collapsed and passed away. That memory is always with me, and I wish Charles could rest more on his days off. Loud footsteps approached. Chloe appears at the bathroom, frowning and visibly annoyed.
"How long are you going to wash your face? Hurry up, I'll be late for my meeting with friends."
"I'm sorry, I'll change right away." The meek Charles quickly left to change his clothes. Meanwhile, Chloe turned to me and handed over a note.
"Evelyn, this is the shopping list for today."
"Yes, I got it. Have fun with your friends.
The weather seems nice today.
Please wash the bed sheets as well." Chloe left without waiting for my reply. After watching her brazen departure, I sighed deeply. Even when my husband was alive, Chloe had always been bold in speaking her mind to us. In the beginning of our living together, "Don't hold back," I had said to Chloe, but as time went on, her aggressive nature became more apparent. Cooking, which Chloe disliked, fell to me. If she disliked a dish, she would push the plate away saying,
"I told you I can't eat this, didn't I?"
Or she would complain about wrinkles in the laundry I had folded. Still, since she was chosen by my son Charles, I tried to keep a quiet smile and avoid causing trouble, but since my husband passed, Chloe's attitude has become more extreme, tiring my spirit.
"Evelyn, you're staying home all day, right? Make sure the bath is ready for me when I get back."
Chloe said this without even looking at me as she left the house. Chloe goes out with her friends almost every week. Since the beginning of her marriage, she has seldom done housework or childcare, focusing more on her appearance and spending freely. She's very sociable, making acquaintances in various places. There were many instances that could have led to suspicions of infidelity when Chloe was younger, but Charles, she wouldn't do that. Trusted her without a doubt, so I didn't pursue it. I was surprised to see Charles, looking sleepy as he entered with his hands full of confectionery boxes upon returning from seeing off Chloe. "Oh, this? It's for Chloe's class reunion next week. She's planning to give them out."
"Really? All of this?"
Chloe doesn't want to be embarrassed. She keeps saying she doesn't want people to think we're living with our parents because we're struggling for money. I'm sorry, but just let her do as she pleases. Of course, it's all right, don't worry. Sitting in the chair, I felt an overwhelming sense of exhaustion. Eventually, I took the list Chloe had given me and went out for the shopping. My familiar shoes felt heavier than usual. Perhaps due to my age, I often feel a dull pain in my knees with every step. Yet, imagining Chloe's likely snide remarks about wasting gas, I gently stroked my knees, encouraging them to keep going. Returning home, sweating and carrying shopping bags in both hands. I set down the bags at the entrance and stretched my bent back when my grandson Kevin appeared. "Oh, Grandma, welcome back. No wonder you weren't home, you went out shopping." Kevin frowned slightly as he looked at the groceries I had bought. Kevin, the only son of Charles and Chloe, had become less visible around the house since starting his job last spring. Though we live together, he's often busy with work, coming home late and leaving early in the morning. And on his days off, he dresses up and goes out. It's rare for Kevin to be at home during the daytime on a weekend. Before I could even take off my shoes, Kevin took the shopping bags to the kitchen and began putting things away quickly. I glimpsed his expression and sensed a happy atmosphere.
"Did something good happen?"
Kevin smiled as he carefully placed eggs from a carton into the refrigerator.
"Actually, there's someone I want to introduce to you. I'm thinking of bringing her home next week."
Introduce someone? As I processed what that meant, I realized my grandson had reached the age for such things. Introduce someone? Could it be what I'm thinking? It might be. "Grandma, there's something I've been thinking about for a long time." "Something you've been thinking about?" "Yes. I can't talk about it just yet, but I promise I will someday. But first, would you meet the person I want to introduce?" Kevin spoke with excitement, and I couldn't help but smile. I was curious about what he had been thinking about, but more so about the kind of woman he would bring home. Growing up, Kevin had never brought a girlfriend home. His absence from home since starting his job, I realized, might have been due to dating. For the first time in a while, I forgot about the usual annoyances and hummed a tune while cleaning. Of course, I had informed Chloe and Charles about this matter, but Charles only muttered, "Marriage, huh?" while Chloe seemed unamused. On their next day off, Kevin brought the woman he wanted to introduce to our home. Chloe had asked me to clean up the front of the house, and while I was sprinkling water, I became a bit wary when an unfamiliar car stopped, but seeing my grandson waving from the driver's seat with a smile, I felt relieved. The car was a rental. Perhaps Kevin had gone to the trouble of renting a car to pick her up. I almost laughed inwardly, thinking Kevin must be quite smitten.
"Grandma, this is Mia."
I couldn't help but smile at the sight of my grandson's happy face as he introduced the woman next to him. Kevin's girlfriend, Mia, seemingly quiet woman with fair skin, greeted us with a nervous smile. I quickly led the two inside. It was for a meet and greet that Kevin had brought her over, and Chloe, in a good mood, eagerly asked how the two had become acquainted. Chloe and Charles sat at a table set for four, facing Kevin and Mia, while I prepared coffee for everyone in the kitchen.
"Evelyn, hurry up and serve them some coffee."
Chloe's mood had turned sour just minutes before. The reason was that Kevin had first told his parents that Mia was pregnant. I was so shocked I lost my voice. The previously warm atmosphere froze in an instant, with Kevin showing a seriousness which he usually does not. Chloe displayed some discomfort at the fact they were having a shotgun wedding.
"We're serious about making this work. We might be young, but please, allow us to marry."
Both were earnestly asking their parents' permission to marry. As a grandmother, I realized it was not my place to comment and silently watched, moved by their demeanor. Watching Kevin plead before his parents, I felt tears welling up. "Of course, we support your marriage. For the baby's sake, it's better to marry soon and settle down mentally."
"Thanks, Dad,"
Kevin said with a smile, looking at Mia. Chloe made a visibly displeased face and waved her hand in front of her own face.
"Shotgun weddings are so tacky. Can you even explain how this happened, Mia?"
Taken aback by such an unexpected question, Mia was surprised.
"What?
And looked down at the table. Kevin quickly placed his hand on her shoulder. Times have changed, this kind of marriage isn't unusual anymore. Besides, we have our own ways of thinking and are ready to work hard.
Kevin, you offered to marry because Mia got pregnant, didn't you? Are you sure this is a well-thought-out decision? Our relationship was serious from the start, aiming for marriage. It just happened that the baby gave us a good opportunity. Just because there's a baby doesn't mean you have to marry, right? Isn't that right, Evelyn?
Chloe suddenly turned to me.
What?
I let out, as Chloe directed a sardonic smile my way. Recalling a TV segment on single mothers we watched as a family recently, indeed. Having a baby doesn't necessarily lead to marriage, but this situation seemed different. Yes, it's true.
Just because there's a baby on the way doesn't mean marriage is a must.
Kevin looked momentarily saddened. I had anticipated such a reaction. So, I had prepared my next words carefully, thinking I'd proudly tell Kevin about it later. But, you two are choosing to move forward because of this baby. Whatever the case, it's a decision made by Kevin and Mia together. No one else has the right to object. Maybe what we can do, Chloe, is to support them, don't you think?
An old person making irresponsible statements.
What would she say next? Everyone probably wondered, but Chloe downed her mug of coffee in one go.
Evelyn, get me a refill, please.
She handed it over, then crossed her arms and sighed.
Well, opposing it is futile anyway. So, when are you planning the wedding? What? Oh, considering Mia's condition, we'd like to do it sooner rather than later. So, this means we're finally getting a break from parenting.
Chloe said wistfully, then turned to face me, who was standing in the kitchen.
Since the family will be living together from now on, can we ask you, the no longer needed housekeeper, to leave? What? My son is getting married, and we want to live with just our cherished family from now on.
Charles, taken aback by Chloe's sudden words, and both Kevin and Mia were left speechless in shock.
Once Kevin's child is born, they'll likely live here for a while, right? We don't want to trouble you with the baby's night crying.
No, I'm fine with that. If there's anything I can do.
I can't think of any advantage to living with someone who's likely to become a care-dependent elderly. You're no longer needed, so could you please leave?
Feeling as if my heart was being torn out, I didn't want to worry Kevin and the others, so
You're absolutely right.
Tried to smile bravely. At that time, I didn't take Chloe's words seriously. But day by day, Chloe's efforts to drive me out of the house became more blatant. Please leave as soon as possible. She kept on saying so. When I consulted with Charles, the timid man could only hold his head and stay silent. What was especially shocking was the realization that Chloe was almost entirely in control of the inheritance from my husband, including the house. My husband, being a man of small desires, had left everything to our son Charles with the intention that all his property would be passed on to him. Effectively, I had no assets or property of my own. And since Charles was under Chloe's thumb, I was stunned to find myself stripped of both my home and inheritance.
What should I do now?
I murmured while looking through old albums of my late husband and I in the middle of the night. He was always gentle, never angry, just calm. Was it his nature that allowed Chloe to become so selfish? If so, I felt like the cause was both my husband and myself. Months passed. Despite the daily harassment from Chloe, unable to leave, I lived enduring it all. One day, while I was taking a shower, the water suddenly turned cold. I worried it was broken, but it seemed Chloe had turned off the water heater's power. Thinking she probably didn't know I was in the bath, I turned the power back on, but it was immediately turned off again. realizing it was harassment.
Could you not turn off the power while I'm bathing?
I asked,
It's a waste of electricity.
only to be shouted at. There were even times in the dead of winter when I had to rinse off with cold water. Exhausted, I consulted Charles.
Could you bathe while Chloe is out?
But he could only weakly suggest. Wondering how he became so spineless, I sighed in disbelief. Even as Chloe said with a snide smile every time we met,
Please rent an apartment and live there as soon as possible.
I was powerless to do anything. Amidst these oppressive days, a piece of bright news was brought in. Mia had finally given birth to a healthy baby. For a moment, Chloe and I celebrated wholeheartedly, tears in our eyes as we laughed together.
Now, if only you'd leave the house quickly, I'd truly be happy.
Chloe's smile suddenly turned cold as she spoke to me. I doubted the woman's character before me. Charles looked away, pretending to be engrossed in the newspaper, as if he had nothing to do with it. Though Chloe was the one who strongly wished for Kevin and his wife to stay at our home, she wanted nothing to do with the baby's care. I did everything I could to help Mia, who always deeply thanked me despite being overwhelmed with caring for the baby. Thank you so much for everything. Don't worry about it. You're going through the hardest time right now, and if there's anything I can do to help, I will. That was a heartfelt sentiment from me. After a particularly busy few months, Kevin suddenly said to me, I have something important to tell you. I'm listening. I responded while preparing dinner in the kitchen. Without stopping my chopping, I waited for Kevin to speak. Grandma, I want to talk to you alone. There's a place I want you to come to this Sunday. Let's keep it a secret from Mom and Dad. My hand holding the knife stopped. A secret from Chloe. When I looked at Kevin, he had a subtle smile as if trying to hide his joy. It was a look he often had as a child when he was plotting something secretly to make me happy. Kevin had always been close to me and my late husband since he was little. Looking back, maybe Chloe felt that her only son's affections were being stolen by me and my husband. That wouldn't have been fun for Chloe. Probably that feeling continues, and Kevin realized that when I'm with Chloe, I feel intimidated and can't speak my mind. I felt dearly loved by my kind grandson and his wife. Next Sunday, Kevin, Mia, and the baby led me to a newly built apartment, about a 10-minute walk from our house. Kevin shared that he had purchased this apartment before the baby was born as we walked. I was deeply surprised by his decisiveness to buy it without consulting Chloe, who had strongly suggested living together. Sorry for making you walk, Grandma.
I need to strengthen my legs anyway. This distance is nothing.
I lightly tapped my thin legs. Though just a 10-minute walk made my knees ache, I resolved not to mention it. The new apartment room was furnished simply, with boxes in the corner. Presumably belonging to Mia, who used to live alone before she got married. Kevin, familiar with the place, started making coffee in the kitchen, while Mia was putting the baby to sleep in another room. So, there's something I wanted to ask you. Kevin began speaking seriously after a brief pause. The ticking of the clock on the wall seemed unusually loud. Would you live with us? I was so surprised by the sudden proposal that I nearly dropped my mug. Kevin looked at me earnestly. Thinking it was a joke, I returned a strained smile, and Kevin looked away distantly.
Ever since I was a child, I couldn't stand seeing Mom treating you so badly.
Well, your mom has a bit of a strong personality, but...
You're always being told to leave the house, aren't you? Dad won't talk back, and I can't stand to see you being treated so poorly by Mom anymore.
What are you talking about? I'm being treated fine.
Remember when I said I had someone I wanted to introduce to you? I've been thinking about something for a long time.
I vaguely remembered such a conversation. It was a while ago, but I distinctly remembered Kevin speaking with an implication of determination when he talked about getting married.
I've been cherished by you and Grandpa since I was little, and I loved both of you. But somehow, I felt Mom was very rude towards you too. I've always watched the two of you and thought that when I grew up, I wanted to help. Kevin, did you really think that way?
Kevin leaned forward decisively, looking into my eyes.
Let's live together. There's no need for you to suffer alone in that house.
Unable to respond, Mia quietly returned and sat next to Kevin. Mia seemed to have listened to the conversation from the next room and looked at me solemnly, understanding the context. Kevin told me about it. Would it be possible for you to live with us? That's a very kind offer. I'm truly happy. But I don't want to intrude on your newlywed life. That's not a problem at all. We need your help as an experienced parent, and it would be reassuring to have you live with us. And apparently, Mia had also been subjected to Chloe's harassment, feeling disgusted with her. Mia had been scorned for having a shotgun wedding and had been yelled at to quiet the baby during night crying. Initially, Mia had wanted to move back to her parents' house after giving birth, but...
So you hate being with me, I understand.
Chloe would say so every time, and Mia was tired of explaining.
We're asking you. Please, would you live with us?
Kevin and Mia pleaded together. Silently watching them, I felt tears streaming down my face.
Thank you.
At that moment, no other words came to mind. Thus, it was decided that I would live with Kevin and his family. Of course, this news would soon reach Chloe's ears. As soon as I agreed to move in, Kevin apparently contacted Chloe and Charles. This was something I had asked Kevin to do. I was certain Chloe would strongly oppose to it. Telling myself this was my final battle, I left Kevin and his family at the apartment and headed home, opening the front door. As soon as I returned, Chloe summoned me to the living room and began yelling at me furiously.
What do you mean you're going to live with Kevin? You're joking, right?
No.
I'm grateful for Kevin's offer and I've decided to accept it. You're kidding, right?
Chloe scoffed. Beside her, Charles frowned, his face troubled.
Moving in with a newlywed couple? That doesn't sound sane. It's obvious you'll be a burden to Kevin.
I was worried about that too. But both of them have accepted me. I want to honestly accept their feelings.
How could this be happening? You say something too, will you?
Until then, Charles had been silent, now staring at Chloe with a vacant look in his eyes. His gaze was powerless, his body seemed to slump. Chloe, I want a divorce.
What? What is it with you all of a sudden?
I can't take this life anymore. Charles, usually quiet, raised his voice, causing Chloe to step back in surprise. He stood up, confronted Chloe directly, and glared at her with intense eyes.
I can't continue with you. Not just your attitude towards me, but what you've done to Mom all this time, I could never forgive. What the heck? You're not used to getting angry, don't start now. The problem here right now is about Evelyn living with Kevin, isn't it? Mom is going to live with Kevin. That's the end of that discussion. Now, it's about you and me. I can't live with you anymore. Why is this suddenly coming up? I've been tolerating your attitude because Mom put up with it. But if Mom's moving out to live with Kevin, that's a different story. Now it's about you and me. I want to divorce you for all the suspicious acts and alleged affairs since we were young. I haven't done anything like that.
Chloe, unusually flustered, looked away, her eyes darting around. Charles was gentle, but when he got angry as a child, he was unstoppable. Probably, Chloe had never seen Charles angry. When he did get angry, he would meticulously prepare to thoroughly defeat his opponent. As expected, Charles casually pulled out a large brown envelope from his company bag and spread its contents messily on the table. It was a report from an infidelity investigation conducted years ago, proving Chloe's affair without needing to read the details. Chloe was speechless and slumped into her seat. Without another word, Charles returned to his room. I noticed the living room curtains fluttering. So, the window was open. Feeling the gentle breeze coming through the window, I wondered if our embarrassing conversation had been overheard by the neighbors and massaged my temples. "Chloe, I can't say anything about you and Charles, but I hope you two can talk it through properly." Chloe just sat there silently, not answering. Then, it came to a lawsuit because Chloe refused to divorce, but the investigation into the affair was the final blow, and the divorce was finalized. I heard rumors that Chloe didn't change her aggressive self even after the divorce, and people gradually distanced themselves from her, leading her to live lonely days. By the time the divorce was finalized, I had already been living with Kevin and the others for 6 months now. I was feeling happy every day, helping with the care of my great-grandchild. Then one day,
"Grandma, Dad's here."
Returning from a walk with my great-grandchild, Charles was sitting in the apartment living room with a serious expression on his face. Seeing my son's face for the first time in 6 months since I left the house, he seemed somewhat healthier. After laying down the great-grandchild I was holding to bed, I smiled at Charles. "Have you been able to sleep since the divorce?"
"Thanks to you, I've been getting about 8 hours.
Charles said this with a brighter expression than I had ever seen before. That's right, my son was someone who used to show such innocent smiles. Even though he has aged and grown a beard, I couldn't help but reminisce about his youthful appearance and laugh bitterly at the comparison to his present self.
"So, what brings you here today? Don't tell me you want to live with us?"
Well, that's actually why I came. Of course, I'll contribute to the new home expenses as well."
"Of course. You're now able to properly manage your finances after the divorce."
"I've already settled things with Kevin and Mia. We're thinking of purchasing this apartment with the inheritance left by Dad, who passed away, in a way that the two of them would agree with. And from now on, I'll be able to protect you, Mom." Originally, Charles was timid by nature but never was a weak man. I'm sure it was the result of him carefully considering his future and taking action after the divorce from Chloe. I looked at my son, my grandson, Mia, and my great-grandchild in turn and closed my eyes. The image of my late husband appeared behind my eyelids. With a peaceful expression.
"Isn't that wonderful?"
It seemed like my late husband was smiling. "What's so wonderful about it? You've put me through so much trouble. If you had lived a little longer, maybe I would have been happier." Thinking this, I then reconsidered. My current happiness is thanks to Kevin and Mia, who wished for my happiness. My gratitude towards these two cannot be fully expressed in words. Suddenly, my great-grandchild started crying as if a fire had been lit, and I quickly rushed to the bed and picked him up. After rocking him a few times, my great-grandchild fell completely at ease in my arms and started breathing softly in sleep.
Dahlia, ever heard of HSP? I'm one, so you could not ask me for favors and stuff. It makes me sad and hurts me. These were words often repeated by sister-in-law Brielle, my husband's sister. HSP, it turns out, refers to someone highly sensitive to stimuli, easily affected by others' moods, a delicate personality. I, bearer of such a sensitive soul, was told, "For the final farewell, it's family only. So could you, a stranger, please leave? Oh, why don't you guard the parking lot outside? Maybe count the blades of grass during the funeral." On the day of the final goodbye to father-in-law Ezekiel, I was told this under the cold sky. When my kind husband Axel learned of this, he uttered something astonishing. Too late for regrets for those who caused alarm. After all, I had been cared for by these people in the worst way possible. Amidst the tense atmosphere, one of the attendees said,
"Aren't you guys gonna stop Dahlia outside?"
"Huh?" Me outside was engaged in a rather surprising activity. I'm Dahlia, a 30-year-old office worker. Met Axel through a friend, dated for 3 years, and just married a year ago. Wish I could say it's been a tranquil married life, but not quite. I've been harboring a certain worry since the beginning of the marriage. At the in-laws' house, parents-in-law and Brielle, 2 years older than Axel, live. We often gather at in-laws' house for seasonal events, and naturally, there's a lot to do, like serving coffee when guests arrive. Glancing at mother-in-law Vivian, she seems busy chatting with relatives. It's not exactly painful, but it's not easy using a kitchen in a stranger's house where I don't usually live. Brielle, could you help me out a bit? I'm not quite sure about the kitchen details." I asked Brielle, who had escaped to the kitchen and was sitting on a chair fiddling with her mobile phone.
Dahlia, I've said this many times, but I am an HSP, so please don't ask me for favors. It makes me sad and hurts me.
With those words, Brielle stormed off to her room, making a loud noise. I did it again. My relationship with Brielle was always like this, unable to have a proper conversation without supposedly hurting her with my words. After high school, Brielle couldn't hold down a job for long due to her personality, hopping from one job to another. By the way, she quit another job a few months ago and is currently unemployed.
"Dahlia, what happened? There was a loud noise."
The first to rush over in such times is always Axel. Again with Brielle, sorry. I apologized with a wry smile.
"Brielle's just being selfish. I'm really sorry for making you feel bad."
Axel always stood by my side. Then Vivian came from the living room.
"Dahlia again? You know Brielle is sensitive. I always tell you to be careful." "Seriously, for Brielle to get that angry? It must have been something big, right? Don't bully her too much, please."
She glared at me angrily. Whenever Vivian's loud voice was heard, Brielle would come out of her room.
Mom, it's okay. It's my fault. Dahlia asked me to make coffee and told me to take the lead since I am unemployed, and it just made me feel so frustrated.
"Dahlia, I'm sorry for making a loud noise earlier."
She apologized to me tearfully. To an outsider, I was the complete villain.
I didn't say anything like that. Brielle, why do you always lie? I just asked you to help me with the kitchen details.
To my words,
"I'm sorry for always misunderstanding. I'm HSP, so please don't raise your voice."
She pretended to tremble and act scared, like a tragic heroine. I hated it because it was so infuriating. The relatives made awkward faces and the atmosphere turned terrible. The one who always managed to change the tense mood was father-in-law Ezekiel.
"Dahlia, you tried to make coffee. Thank you. Come on, Vivian and Brielle. Apologize to Dahlia. Brielle, you're an adult now, not a child anymore."
He was the one to firmly reprimand Brielle, his own daughter. Because of that, from the relatives,
That's right, Brielle, you're an adult now. Maybe it's time to look for a partner or start job hunting. You can't rely on your parents forever. Learn a bit from your brother Axel.
Hearing this, Brielle's face turned red. So, visits to the in-laws' house always left me exhausted. Sitting on the sofa at home, I let out a big sigh, unaware. Seeing me like that, Axel, as always, said,
"Dahlia, my family, I'm really sorry. Brielle has always been a pain, can't keep a job. I tell them not to coddle her, but Mom is like that, you know? It's a headache for me too. We don't have to go to my parents' house anymore."
Axel offered, but being a newlywed, if I'm the only one not going, Axel might be criticized. Hesitating to accept his suggestion, I thought about it. After all, those gatherings were only once a month, if at all, and I just needed to endure for a few hours. Besides, I thought I understood a bit about this HSP character trait Brielle talked about. I have a best friend named Maya. We were high school classmates and moved from Dallas to Boston together. Of course, I asked her to give a speech at my wedding. Maya, too, has a fiancé she's been with for a long time, about to get married. He's serious, responsible, and kind. We're both busy with work and haven't seen each other recently, but she's my precious friend. I didn't know much about HSP until Brielle mentioned it, but the more I looked into it, it's just like Maya, I thought. I wasn't sure if I could act as Brielle wanted, but I tried to understand her personality. Amid these days, my husband and I were called to the in-laws' house. Ezekiel wasn't there, only Vivian and Brielle. Vivian opened her mouth and blurted out something unbelievable to me.
Dahlia, can you stop it already?
Filled with question marks, I replied. And what is that? Vivian, face red with anger, said.
Don't play dumb, Dahlia. You've been sending harassing messages to Brielle almost daily. She's scared. Poor thing.
What? I was baffled, having no clue about such accusations. Then Axel intervened.
So where's the proof? If you're going that far, show us those messages, Brielle.
With Axel's words, Brielle shivered a little. I was too scared and deleted them, but I'm not lying. Thinking that there are people like Dahlia in the world makes me too scared to even think about getting a job. I was infuriated by her weak, crying figure despite being an adult.
Brielle had a hard time at work and quit her previous job, right? She started feeling better recently, so I suggested she start looking for a job again. Then she cried and said all that yesterday. I felt so sorry for her.
No way. That's just too far-fetched. And Vivian believing that? They're both ridiculous. Disgusted, I looked at the two of them.
So that's all you called us for? Consider our position being dragged into such a stupid conversation? Brielle, what's with you always using HSP as an excuse? You've been to a hospital or something for it, right?
Axel glared at Brielle. Huh? Of course. I'm taking medication and it's really hard for me. I can't work in this state. Brielle yelled, slamming the table with a loud noise, Vivian echoing her.
Yes, Axel, you're being deceived by Dahlia. Brielle is suffering so much. Why aren't you on her side? You're crazy.
Axel looked at them as if they were filth.
What are you talking about? You two are the ones who are crazy.
Then Axel retorted, Brielle, please stop using me as an excuse for not wanting to work. It's extremely unpleasant. Brielle's face turned red at my words. For the next few months, for the first time, I experienced what seemed like a peaceful married life. I learned how important it is to distance oneself from the source of the stress. It was a cold, early morning when it happened unexpectedly. At 4 a.m., Axel's mobile phone rang, rubbing his sleepy eyes.
Ugh, it's Mom. Obviously, I can ignore it, right?
As Axel was about to go back to sleep, I said, Calling this early in the morning is a bit strange, don't you think? Maybe something's happened. Reluctantly answering the call, he heard,
Axel, Ezekiel has...
It was a heart attack. By the time we rushed to the hospital, Ezekiel was already gone. Vivian, seeing me,
Why did Dahlia come too? Go away!
She threw her bag at me. Brielle was also there.
It's all Dahlia's fault. All of it. Non-family members leave.
I said to their irrational words, Enough! Can't you be quiet at a time like this? It's so unfair to Ezekiel. And don't worry, I don't consider you family either.
Axel apologized to me, but there was so much to do. Ignoring the unreliable two, we busied ourselves with death notices, funeral and church arrangements. Ezekiel's sister, auntie-in-law Lucy, who lived far away. He worked so hard. Rest well, Ezekiel. So, what will you do, Axel? Axel looking straight ahead. My mind's been made up for a long time. Lucy simply nodded in understanding. We decided to have a funeral with only close family. On the day of the funeral, I never expected to be treated like that. While I was bustling around, Dahlia, can you come here? Vivian and Brielle called me over. What is it? I asked. They had a request. We asked Axel, but he refused. Can you ask him for us? I was shocked when I heard what they wanted. Now that Ezekiel's gone, you both work, right? Could you help us out financially? Maybe $1,500 a month would be good. We're family after all, right? They were completely ridiculous. I couldn't help but laugh, holding my stomach. Family? Huh? Please don't make me laugh. Weren't you the ones who said non-family members should leave? Always calling us outsiders and now saying we're family when you're in trouble? Isn't that too self-centered? I refuse, of course. You're both young. Please work. Laughing derisively at me, Brielle, using her large frame, forcefully pushed my shoulder and said, Fine, then we want a family-only farewell. So could you, an outsider, please leave? Go guard the parking lot outside. And while you're at it, count the blades of grass during the funeral. Pulling my arm and laughing as it was amusing, she kicked me out of the funeral home without even giving me a coat in the cold season. Brielle, doesn't it hurt your heart to do such a petty thing? Don't you realize that your whims hurt people? My words seemed to have no effect. What? Preaching to me, a younger person? Heart hurting? I've never felt that. Rather, I get irritated watching people who don't do as I want. Dahlia, your happy work-life boasting is annoying. As she glared at me, I replied, I see. Well, that's enough. I wish you both the best in difficult times ahead. Smiling kindly, I walked towards the parking lot. I heard their crude laughter behind me, but it didn't bother me anymore. About 20 minutes later, a pale-faced Vivian and Brielle, along with an enraged Axel, showed up in the parking lot where I was. Dahlia, what are you doing? Are you crazy? Their faces, losing their minds, were comically absurd, and I couldn't help but laugh. What am I doing? Just doing as I was told, guarding the parking lot and counting grass blades. I'm at 350 now. Behind me. As I'm an outsider, I'm not allowed in the funeral home. I've been told by Vivian and Brielle to guard the parking lot and count the blades of grass. I had written these words on a cardboard box and placed it nearby. Why are you out here in the cold doing this? The relative asked worriedly, but I silently pointed at the cardboard box. Axel brought me my coat. I couldn't believe you were actually doing this. This is the last time. I'm really sorry for all the trouble I've caused. To the tearful Axel. It's okay, I said. Axel always stood by me. When I returned to the funeral home, several relatives rushed over. Don't worry about this and go to your mother's side with peace of mind. Why would I? I looked puzzled and Axel quickly nodded behind me. I later learned that when Axel noticed I was missing, Where's Dahlia? He asked Vivian and the others, who replied with a nasty laugh. Dahlia said she's an outsider and wouldn't attend the funeral, so she went outside. She's guarding the parking lot since she has nothing better to do. She's terrible, right? Maybe you should break up with her. Then you can come back home, Axel, and give Mom some peace. Who would believe such a lie? Axel, outraged, declared. Comfort you? Are you kidding me? I've said it before, my family is Dahlia and Dahlia alone. I don't want anything to do with people who only hurt her. I'm cutting ties with you."
At the mention of cutting ties, Vivian was agitated.
"Cutting ties? Such unfilial behavior. At least support us financially. You expect us to live in that house, just the two of us? Show some filial piety."
In response to Vivian's furious words,
"Why do you even think you can continue living in that house? It's too presumptuous. It's embarrassing. Right, Lucy?"
Lucy nodded to Axel's comment. The in-laws' house was originally built by step-grandparents. When the step-grandparents passed away, the property and the house were inherited by Lucy after a discussion among siblings. "Vivian, you didn't help Dad and Mom when they were in trouble, did you? Instead, you drove them out of their own home. I've always apologized on behalf of Ezekiel, and I inherited the house. There's no plan for me to return. Brielle, you too. You've always bullied my daughter every time you saw her. She's so afraid of you that she didn't even come today." Lucy glared at the two.
"Dad was planning to divorce Mom and leave the house. You didn't know that, did you? He consulted me many times, saying he was scared of you two and didn't know what to do. Lucy and I were preparing to sell the house."
Axel spoke calmly.
"Divorce? Selling the house? Axel, what are you talking about?"
The fear of possibly losing their home seemed to instantly drain the color from their faces.
"Brielle, you need to straighten out your childlike behavior, or you're going to face serious consequences soon."
Axel's advice was unheeded.
Shut up! I'm not wrong. Selling the house, what are you thinking? That's it. I'll move into your place. Take care of me and Mom.
Ignoring their childlike comments, Axel said,
"You need to leave the house by the end of the month. We've got a potential buyer. And don't think of depending on us. Dahlia's mother has been diagnosed with an illness. We're moving to Dahlia's hometown."
Axel's words were met with loud complaints from the two. Amidst the tense atmosphere, a relative who entered the funeral home said, "Aren't you going to stop Dahlia outside?" What followed was as earlier. Neither of the two, already disliked by the relatives, had anyone on their side and seemed diminished. "Brielle, I've always thought this, but HSP? That's a lie, isn't it?" Brielle glared at me.
No, I'm taking medication and...
"Then what's the name of the medication? Which hospital?" I pressed her.
That is,
Brielle fell silent. HSP is an innate personality trait, and there's no medication for it. My best friend is like that. She's been suffering in silence, pushing herself too hard. She's serious and tends to bear it all alone. But you're different. You're not HSP. You're just running away from unpleasant things, ignoring others' feelings, and throwing tantrums like a child whenever something doesn't go your way. What you did to Maya, I will never forgive you for that." Months ago, I met my best friend Maya after a long time. She was even thinner than her already slender frame and told me she was visiting a psychiatrist now. The cause was stress at work. A new employee, upon realizing Maya was younger, behaved over-familiarly from the first day, pushing work onto her.
it's faster when someone experienced does it, right? Thanks a bunch.
Maya ended up with constant overtime. Eventually, this document is due tomorrow, right? It needs to be submitted today. This and this are incorrect." The new employee slammed the desk and announced,
I'm going home, and I quit today. I can't work in a place where seniors bully newcomers.
She left all her work and really went home. Maya, feeling responsible, soon took a leave from the company. Her engagement ended due to misunderstandings with her fiancé. "Was it my fault? I was scared and didn't know what to say." I comforted Maya as she cried silently. Just hearing her story made me despise that person. Just hearing about it makes me hate that person. Why not sue? It's unfair that only we suffer. Do you have any evidence? Maya had recorded their conversations to review them later, suspecting her own communication might have been faulty. I was infuriated by the arrogant attitude. but more than that. Wait, this person, their name, is it Brielle? I felt dizzy when I found out that the unreasonable person was Brielle. Upon learning this, I can't sue someone from Dahlia's family, Maya said. Don't worry, we're practically strangers now. I'll fight with you. My cheerful laughter brought a slight smile to Maya's face. So, expect a letter from a lawyer about the compensation claim soon. Make sure you pay up. I smiled kindly and Brielle's face went pale. The funeral proceeded solemnly, and I was able to say my final goodbye to Ezekiel. Vivian was too distraught to give the eulogy, so Axel did it instead. There were sniffles around the room as he spoke of his father. We moved to Dallas. Mom's health is improving. Vivian and Brielle, kicked out of their house, managed to rent a cheap apartment. With little cash left and now the compensation to Maya, their life is tough. Vivian started a part-time job.
Brielle, you quit your job again? Be responsible.
Shut up, I'm not wrong. A parent should support their child. Once closed, they now constantly argue, and it seems they might be evicted from the apartment. I've issued a restraining order against them and instructed Mom to call the police without hesitation if they show up at our place. Maya quit her job and returned to Dallas with us. She's still recovering, but gradually gaining weight, and her smile is coming back. Nothing makes me happier. Someday when I have children, I want to teach them the importance of empathy and that there's no need to endure and be friends with someone they can't understand.
Blaming others for one's own sins, such an act should never be tolerated. If there were ever someone who did such a thing, surely divine retribution would follow. My name is Michelle. I'm part of a family of 3 with my husband Spencer and our son who just started kindergarten this year. Both Spencer and I have jobs, so we get help with our son from my parents who live nearby. Kindergarten is different from daycare. They don't look after kids, so we rely on my parents to take care of our son after he gets out. I've always loved my parents, but my father's business, which he ran himself, was a bit of a worry for me. I have a younger brother, Carl, who's 4 years younger than me. When I was in the 3rd grade and Carl was in his final year of kindergarten, there was a bit of a stir when my father's business became known at the kindergarten. The story even spread to my elementary school, and friends who I thought were close suddenly turned cold. My father ran a construction company that did city repairs, and he always said he was doing things for the benefit of others. I thought my father was a respectable man, so I couldn't understand why his work was such a topic, or rather, a problem. Carl sensed the change around him and came crying to me, but I couldn't give him a clear answer and was troubled myself. My father employed and rehabilitated young people who had fallen out of society, so our house, which was also a dormitory for his company's employees, had quite a few rowdy people. Maybe that gave the wrong impression to people outside. I guessed this and tried to clear up the misunderstanding with my friends, but things didn't go well, and I ended up isolated in my class. That's when Spencer, a childhood friend, helped me out. Spencer and I had known each other since before kindergarten because of the relationship between his father and mine. Spencer, who was in the same class, stood up for me and patiently explained to our classmates, "Mr. Corleone is a respectable man, and everyone working for him is good-hearted. Despite how they might look, seriously, people don't know anything." Spencer, who had been to my house and knew the situation well, said this angrily. I trusted Spencer a lot and thought of him as a very important friend. Carl looked up to Spencer like a brother. I wanted to keep my relationship with Spencer close, and indeed, our interaction continued until we graduated from college. Spencer studied business administration in college and got a job at a consulting firm that supports company management. Seeing my father helping young people by giving them jobs, I became interested in doing the same and got a job at a recruitment agency. After graduation, we were busy getting used to our jobs and gaining work experience, and we only talked over the phone or through messages at the change of seasons. But 3 years later, Spencer's consulting firm started supporting my father's company, and Spencer became the person in charge. Long time, Michelle. Maybe there's some kind of fate, being able to support Mr. Corleone's company. You've become quite the accomplished consultant, Spencer. Spencer blushed and said he still had a long way to go, but the 3 years we hadn't seen each other felt like nothing, and we were just like old times. Carl, too, blushed and was happy to see Spencer again after a long time.
Good to see you again,
he said, smiling shyly. Of course, Spencer had other clients and was busy every day, and I was promoted to head a new division at the recruitment agency, doubling my workload. But we wanted to make up for time we couldn't see each other, and started spending time together whenever we could. Is this a date? We're not really dating, just best friends, I thought to myself calmly. Then one day, at a theme park we'd always wanted to go to, in a spot with a great view of the park's iconic castle, Spencer said,
We've known each other for a long time, Michelle, but I want to be with you forever and ever. Will you consider marrying me?
Surprised by his sudden proposal without even officially dating, I saw Spencer scratching his head. I can't imagine being with anyone but you in the future, Spencer. Let's keep this up. And so we went from childhood friends to husband and wife. Our fathers, who were friends, knew us well, and when we announced our engagement, they were overjoyed. Carl was thrilled too, saying,
You really becoming my big brother?
Our marriage was blessed by everyone around us. We continued working after getting married, leading fulfilling lives both personally and professionally. It took a while due to our busy schedules, but 3 years after marriage, I received a gift from the Cabbage Patch. My parents, in-laws, and Carl were thrilled, all shouting, "Yay!" together, making me chuckle. I gave birth to our son and became a rookie mom. Spencer, now a rookie dad, and I struggled together with parenting. Even with the support from my parents and in-laws, watching our child grow up every day was nothing but happiness. When my son started kindergarten, my world as a mother expanded. I began interacting with other moms whose kids attended the same kindergarten. These mom friends became a natural part of my life, and interacting with various moms was stimulating and enjoyable. However, in every group, there's always someone who's a bit different. And in my circle of moms, there was one who stood out. She was someone you need extra effort to get along with, the kind of person you label as troublesome. Her name was Natalie, a 22-year-old mother with a son the same age as mine, meaning she had him at 18. I don't distance myself from her for being a young mother, but for other reasons. Natalie, despite being a young mother, seemed to idolize or even claim to be a troubled youth. She dressed flamboyantly, with pink hair and excessive jewelry on her neck, wrists, and fingers. Her language was far from what you'd expect from an adult, more like a high school girl, and not in a good way. Her speech mixed crude expressions with a forced cuteness, which was tiring to listen to. "Hey, you know the cafe near the station? That's awful, expensive, and the service is bad. I gave a waitress there a piece of my mind, and she was shaking. I have the same name as that singer, you know, but I sing way better. The world is so stupid for not making me famous." It was unclear if she was trying to brag about her exploits or show off her abilities, but her conversations were always one-sided and disorganized. I just nodded along, but of course, I didn't take her seriously. She was the last person I wanted to deal with. But our kids got along well, so I had no choice but to interact with her. There was a sports day at the kindergarten on a Sunday in May, but Spencer couldn't attend due to an unavoidable work commitment.
Sorry, I'm really sad I can't be there, but don't be upset, okay? I promise I'll definitely go next year.
I reassured Spencer, who was almost in tears, saying it was unfortunate but understandable. Sure, it's a shame, but it's work. I'm sure he'll understand. We'll go together next year." Spencer looked so disappointed. It was like consoling a child throwing a tantrum. On the day of the sports festival, the weather was perfect. I went there with a video camera and a DSLR with a telephoto lens, determined to record everything for Spencer. The schoolyard was bustling with parents watching their children. Just as the excitement was peaking after the principal's speech, I heard Natalie's unmistakable voice. "Such nice weather, and yet everyone's here. Well, we're here too, I guess." As I was thinking she shouldn't have bothered coming, I noticed a loud man's voice.
Right. On a day like this, the racetrack would be a better choice. But well, gotta do it for the kids.
A man about Natalie's age, dressed as flamboyant as she was, started talking to me, checking me out. Natalie introduced him as her husband Cody, but Cody just said,
"Yo,"
and kept eyeing me. These two were clearly a match, both in appearance and attitude. Cody's long, red-dyed hair, low-slung jeans, and the extreme distressing on his jeans made them look almost torn apart. He wore skull rings and a long keychain. Their attitudes and words didn't fit that of adults and parents.
"Nice camera and video equipment. You must be rich, huh? Cool."
He was too familiar for a first meeting and almost touched my camera, so I stepped back. "No, I'm just putting extra effort into recording this for Spencer, who couldn't make it today." "I wish I had gear like that."
"Leave it to me. I'll hit big soon, and I'll buy you anything."
As they got lost in their own world, I took the opportunity to walk away. The next program is my son's dance, so I have to be on standby, so I don't have time to worry about these two. I had to get ready for my son's dance performance, so I didn't have time for them. But as I was focusing on filming, Cody approached, disturbing my concentration.
"Man, I've been a handsome guy since middle school. Always had girls crying over me. Being the heartbreaker was tough."
Claiming to have made girls cry, probably because they were annoyed and upset.
"I ended up marrying Natalie because we had a kid, but imagine all the world's women missing out on me. What a tragedy."
That sounded more like a deluded comedy.
"And you're a pretty attractive woman,"
he said, ogling me in a way that sent shivers down my spine. Because of him, my focus on filming was disrupted, and I missed crucial moments. Just when I was getting frustrated, Cody noticed Natalie approaching and quickly left me alone. I wish he had disappeared sooner, but it was too late. The dance was over. "Sorry, Spencer. I'll make it up during the next race." I was determined to capture the race perfectly, but again, Cody approached me at the worst moment. Looking up to the heavens in frustration, he continued.
"I was known as a lady killer, but also feared by men. Can't count how many guys I've beaten up. They used to call me Lucifer."
"Lucifer? What, like a fallen angel?"
"Let's date in secret, behind Natalie's back."
"Are you kidding me? Who would date someone like you? Just go away and stop interfering with my filming." I was at a loss, not knowing how to react or express my anger when Natalie appeared. "What are you doing? Hitting on Michelle, you pervert?" To my dismay, they started arguing right in front of me. I couldn't focus on filming anymore. Just got caught up in their ridiculous fight. Meanwhile, my son crossed the finish line first, but I couldn't capture his victorious moment on camera. Sorry, Spencer. I was dumbfounded by this unbelievable outcome. That evening, when Spencer came home excited to see our son's performance, I had to break the unfortunate news. As Spencer slumped in disappointment, I detailed the whole incident. He was shocked at such unreasonable behavior and comforted me, saying I did well under the circumstances.
"It's best to avoid that weird couple. It's unfortunate for the kids, but we need to keep our distance."
Spencer's words gave me strength. Facing those two alone made me question my sanity. They were that intense. About a half a month later, While out with my family, we unexpectedly ran into Natalie and Cody. Spotting us, Natalie called out, "Hey girls, are you guys out too? Oh, perfect. How about we all have dinner together?" Reluctantly, we agreed to her forceful invitation and went to a nearby family restaurant. Spencer asks in a whisper if these two are the same old weirdo couple. I regretted it so much that I should have simply refused. But when I saw how happy our 2 children were to have dinner together, I couldn't bring myself to say goodbye. As soon as they entered the family restaurant, the 2 of them started ordering, but they only ordered the most expensive items on the menu. Since it's a family restaurant, the prices aren't that high, but I mainly order good items. That is, items that are expensive. They devoured their food like starved children, even though their manners were far better. After eating a bit, they started their usual baseless boasting. It began with Spencer mentioning his interest in cars.
Yeah, I love cars too, but back in the day, it was all about motorcycles for me. My gang buddies used to call me Ghost Rider.
Natalie added, "Cody was so cool back then. He fit the cool guy image perfectly."
Yeah, the highways we rode together were awesome. We made chips look like nothing.
"Wait, weren't you Lucifer? Now you're Ghost Rider?" As I forced a smile, he continued, mistaking my fear for awe.
Yeah, I was wild when I was younger. Even got this tattoo.
He rolled up his sleeve to show a tattoo of a dragon, which was actually quite small. I tried to get a closer look. He quickly pulled his sleeve back down. The rest of the meal was filled with their boasting of supposed heroic deeds, and my husband and I felt forced to listen. When it was time to pay, Natalie said, "Since you invited us and we came on the spot, we don't have any money on us. You'll have to pay today. Thanks." Cody added,
"Thanks for the treat."
and they both quickly left with their child, leaving us stunned. Weren't they the ones who invited us?
Exactly as you said, Michelle. They're even more intense than I expected.
Spencer commented.
And that tattoo must be a sticker. It was peeling and shifting.
I know, right? They're always so exhausting. I can't even find the words to respond. It's like constant machine gun talk. I've even started rehearsing comebacks in my head. Our son enjoyed the meal, but we hardly felt like we ate, and ended up making noodles at home for a late-night snack. We agreed to avoid those 2 as much as possible, but fate would have us cross paths with them again. One day, we were on our way to my parents' house when we heard a loud crash. Looking up, we saw a car had rear-ended another. We rushed to the scene to check for injuries, ready to provide first aid and call emergency services if needed. To our surprise, it was Natalie and Cody, who had stepped out in front of the offending vehicle. Cody looked dazed, coming out of the driver's seat, and Natalie stumbled out of the passenger side. Fortunately, they didn't seem injured.
"What the hell? Parking your car here? Causing me to hit it?"
Cody started yelling, blaming the parked car. 3 men then emerged from a nearby building.
"What was that noise? It was incredibly loud."
Seeing their car damaged, they were furious.
"Who's the idiot who did this?"
Angry men. Their demeanor was clearly not that of ordinary people, hinting at something more sinister.
"Is this some kind of sabotage against our organization?"
One of the men suggested, glaring at Cody, who was now visibly shaking, and on the verge of tears. Natalie was also trembling with fear. As the men advanced on Cody, he blurted out the unthinkable.
"They did it. We were just passing by."
He tried to pin the blame on us, who were completely uninvolved. The men turned their sharp glares on us.
"It's him. He was driving and crashed into you."
I was about to lose my patience, but Spencer reached his limit first. In an uncharacteristically angry tone, he addressed the men, not Cody.
"Hey, how's it going?"
Cody and Natalie were speechless, and the men responded to Spencer with respect.
Spencer, long time no see.
They greeted with deep bows.
Enough of this noise in front of our office.
Another man, evidently the boss, shouted as he came out.
You idiot. I told you to call me Vice President.
The man noticed us.
Spencer, Michelle, what are you doing here?
It turned out he was my brother, Carl. After hearing the situation from the earlier men, Carl, with a face full of anger, confronted Cody.
What kind of sense is that, blaming others for the crime you committed? And it's Spencer and Michelle, no less.
The two were shaking, unable to comprehend what was happening.
Besides, Spencer doesn't even have a driver's license. How could he be involved in an accident?
Indeed, Spencer doesn't have a license yet. He just started attending driving school and is about to get his learner's permit.
Oh man, this car is worth $15 million. Who knows how much the repairs will cost? You'll be held fully responsible.
Cody, hearing this, started crying, saying he had no money. When Carl pressed about the insurance, Cody and Natalie admitted they didn't have any because they couldn't afford to renew it.
Help us, please, if you have influence over these people.
Spencer and I had no intention of helping someone who shifts blame onto others, but we did clarify our situation. This office is my family's home. Yes, my family is involved in the mafia. As a child, when our family business became known, I was ostracized and looked down upon, but Spencer, a childhood friend, came to my aid. Spencer, working in a consultancy, had been instrumental in reorganizing my father's organization into a legitimate company. Originally, my father's organization valued the local community, but it underwent reforms to clear misunderstandings and gain societal acceptance. Spencer, who worked tirelessly for this transformation, gained immense trust and respect from the members, or rather employees, and became known as a brotherly figure. Spencer, admired by my brother Carl and the employees since childhood, became a respected figure in the organization after marrying me, the daughter of the boss. Cody quit his job. That's why he has no money. We gave him a job opportunity, but he ran away in just 3 days. Cody was shocked at my revelation. I run a recruitment agency, leading a new project aimed at finding suitable jobs for those who are struggling to find work. Cody had quickly quit the job we arranged for him. Then my father spoke.
With that attitude, you'll never be able to pay for the car damage. Let's find you a proper job.
Cody and Natalie, overwhelmed by my father's authoritative presence, broke down in tears. Later, Cody was employed by our organization, or rather our company, starting at the very bottom. Natalie also ended up working long hours at a related factory. Concerns arose around their child, but my father's daycare took care of him while his parents worked. My father runs the daycare as part of his social contribution efforts. The repair cost for the luxury car was hefty, and it would take years of hard work to cover it. My father intended to use this time to reform Cody's character. With the troublesome couple out of the picture, our lives returned to peace.
Still, I wonder if that guy's character can really be reformed.
Spencer said this while driving. He had recently passed his driving test and obtained his license. If Dad's guidance can't do it, nothing can, but only if he can.
I better focus on driving. Wouldn't want to cause a rear-end collision.
Just then, our son said he was hungry, so we pulled into a drive-thru at a nearby hamburger restaurant. Watching our son happily eat his hamburger, I savored the happiness of our current life.
Michael and his wife are moving in with their 7 grandkids. You'll be sleeping in a 70-square-foot storage shed.
Robert said. I couldn't help but gape in shock.
There's no fulfillment in doing housework and living with just another elderly person. Now you'll have plenty of chores and grandkids to take care for again.
It seemed he was treating me like a mere servant, but I had plans of my own. I packed my bags. Grandma? That was Lisa's voice, clear as a bell. I felt sorry for these kids getting dragged into this mess. Just wait a little, okay? I told Lisa and left the house. I was determined to create a happy environment for these kids. This was just a ceasefire. I resolved to work with Michael and fight to reclaim our happiness. I am Elizabeth, turning 72 this year. I married Robert and we were blessed with 2 children, our son Michael and our daughter Emily. I met Robert at work. After his persistent pursuit, we started dating and got married. However, my parents were strongly against the marriage. I left home in a whirlwind, almost like eloping. But after a while, Robert's gentlemanly behavior during our courtship days disappeared. He turned into a typical male chauvinist, expecting me, a woman, to naturally handle all household chores and care for him and the kids. He never once changed the kids' diapers. As the children grew, his mindset influenced them too. He spoiled Michael, our eldest, saying he could go to any university and do whatever he wanted. But for Emily, our daughter, he declared, education is useless for women, and denied her college education. Heartbroken, Emily gave up her dream of studying further. Without the permission to work, I had no savings. I apologized to Emily, but she said, I know what Dad is like, and it's okay. I'll make it on my own. Years later, Emily studied in Canada and married a local. We rarely meet, but she has found happiness on her own terms, just as she promised. Even if the parents are flawed, the children can still grow up strong. I'm deeply grateful for that. Michael, after graduating from college, got a job at a local company. He seems busy, but seeing him work so diligently makes me feel proud of his growth. Years later, one day, my husband and I received a request to talk from Michael. He seemed serious. I wondered if he wanted to quit his job or if something was bothering him. However, what Michael said next was completely unexpected.
I want to get married,
he announced, a wonderful surprise indeed. But I hadn't sensed any signs of this. I never heard about him dating anyone. Curious, I asked, who is she? Michael shared about her with a bit of shyness. I was concerned about Robert listening silently beside us. Would he impose the same archaic expectations about women and household chores on Michael's wasn't unthinkable, given how Robert always prized Michael. Though I had remained silent in the past, I was ready to confront Robert if it meant protecting my children's happiness. Fortunately, my worries proved unnecessary. Robert didn't interfere with Michael's marriage. Instead, he quietly observed their happiness. Michael's wife Karen turned out to be a wonderful woman, kind to us, and even engaging Robert in conversation, which he seemed to enjoy. Michael and I felt relieved seeing this. "You've found a great wife," I commented. Michael beamed, saying,
I think so too.
Their happiness was evident. Soon, it took a more tangible form.
Karen is pregnant,
Michael informed us. Grandchildren followed, and before we knew it, Michael and Karen were blessed with 7 children, becoming a large family. Robert generously supported them, frequently giving money for education and living expenses.
I can't accept this much every time,
Michael would protest. But if Michael refused, Robert would give it to Karen. The frequency of this generosity concerned me. Robert, If you keep giving money like this, we'll run out of living expenses. We haven't done much for Emily, yet you give Karen money so often. Can't you think it over?" However, Robert reacted more angrily than I expected. We didn't speak for about a month. The Michael family, sensing the tension, felt guilty.
"Sorry for causing a fight."
Michael apologized. I don't blame Michael's family at all. But Michael said, "I'll refrain from coming to the house for a while." I also asked him to do so until Robert calms down. Years later, after Robert retired and Michael's children grew up, our marriage was reduced to minimal conversation following that fight. Since then, Robert never gave money to Michael's family in my presence, but he apparently often went to their house to give Karen money. I guess it's his only joy in old age. Aware of this, I chose to turn a blind eye to avoid further arguments. However, one day, Robert suddenly suggested,
"What about living with Michael's family? The grandkids are many, and eventually this house will go to Michael. It might be good for them to get used to this area now."
The idea wasn't bad. But would Michael's family agree? There are still young children in elementary school, and moving them isn't practical. Plus, our house, despite being larger, might not have enough rooms for everyone, potentially making it cramped with more people. I explained this and gently declined the cohabitation. I think Karen is a good person as Michael's wife, but that's partly because we maintain a distance. However, Robert didn't accept my view. One day he went out and returned with a lot of luggage, as if he'd taken a drastic measure.
"I'm home,"
he announced. "Welcome back. What's with all the luggage?" I asked, only to see Michael's family entering our house behind him. Michael wasn't there, but Karen and the grandkids, looking anxious with large bags, were. "Hi, Elizabeth. We'll be in your care from today," Karen said cheerily. I was taken aback.
"We're moving it with Michael and his 7 kids. I've decided you'll be sleeping in a 70-square-foot storage shed,"
he said, entering the house with the luggage. "Wait a minute. Didn't I say that's impossible? Does Michael even know about this?" I asked.
"Michael was at work, so I left him a letter. There's nothing impossible about a family living together. It's spring break now, so it's a good time,"
Robert said with a smirk.
"You also got a new room in the storage shed. There's no fulfillment in doing housework for just 2 old people, right? Now you'll have plenty of chores and grandkids to care for again."
He added, "Such a thing."
"Don't think your opinion will always prevail."
I stood there, dumbfounded. But what shocked me more than Robert's usual selfish behavior was Karen's reaction. I had always thought of her as a nice person, Michael's wife, but she just chuckled at my dismay. "Looks like you'll be busy from now on, Elizabeth," she said. I bristled at her comment. Were they both treating me like a servant? I had my own plans. I left them there, buzzing with excitement, and silently went back to my room to pack my things.
"What are you doing?"
Robert asked. "Since my opinion doesn't matter in this house, I'll be returning to my parents' home," I replied.
"What?"
Robert stood there, stunned. I vaguely heard him and Karen complaining, but it all sounded like noise to me. But just as I was about to leave the house, "Grandma?" I clearly heard Lisa's voice. The poor kids, caught up in all this. "Just wait a little," I told Lisa and left. That night, I got a call from Michael, who had just returned from work.
"Mom, are Karen and the kids with you? When I got home, I found a note saying they'd moved to your place, but no one's home, and Karen isn't answering her phone."
He sounded panicked. I calmed him. "They must be fine. Everyone's at the house, but I have left, so I don't know the current situation."
"Huh?"
I explained the situation in detail to Michael. I had refused to live together. However, to silence my objections, Robert brought everyone over without my consent, trying to force me into the shed and treat me like a servant. I couldn't stand it and left, but I was worried about the grandchildren. Surely, they too were brought over without having to understand the situation.
"I'd refuse to live together too. The kids didn't want to change schools, and I've seen enough of Dad to know living together would burden you, Mom,"
Michael said with a sigh.
"I need to convince Karen to understand and bring everyone back home."
I nodded. "I have an idea." Michael seemed interested. I shared my plan with him. "You must be tired from work, but can you help me?"
"Of course,"
he replied. "Then I'll contact you again. Rest well for tonight." I informed Michael of this and ended the call. I set down my mobile phone and sighed. It looked like I was in for a busy time. As I pondered this, someone entered my room and spoke to me.
"Do you think the plan will work?"
"Yes. Thank you for helping, Dad," I responded. The man smiled satisfactorily. He was my father, Joseph, a landlord of this area.
"I told you not to marry that man. Now you're back at this age,"
he chided. "Well, you stopped saying that once Emily and Michael were born," I retorted, laughing together. I had left home almost like an elopement, due to their strong opposition to my marriage. But after my children were born, I understood the value of parents. By then, I had to come to understand my parents' feelings of not liking Robert. I had secretly returned home once to introduce my children to them. My dad, initially angry at my return, quickly softened at the sight of his grandchildren.
"Come back whenever you're in trouble,"
he had said. Though we weren't close with our relatives, parents are always parents. Robert didn't know, but my parents had paid for Emily's study abroad. He thought he had funded it, but he only contributed 30%. He was a fool to think that the little amount covered it all. I decided to rely on my parents for this matter and returned to their house. It felt shameful to depend on my elderly parents, but I was ready to do anything to protect my children and grandchildren. They understood my feelings. Dad had a simple solution.
"Just kick them out."
And so began my counterattack based on Dad's strategy. The next morning, I went to the office to get divorce papers and returned home. Robert, seeing me return, smirked.
"Did you spend the night outside? The shed would have been better."
I ignored him and looked towards the kitchen, hearing water running. I thought Karen might be cleaning, but it was my granddaughter, Lisa, a primary school student. "Where's Karen? Why is Lisa cleaning up?" I shouted at Robert in frustration.
"Lisa is a girl. She should be able to do housework,"
he responded nonchalantly. Angered by his words, I retorted, "Karen is the woman here, isn't she?" She must have noticed my voice. Lisa closed the faucet tightly and smiled at me with relief. "Welcome back, Grandma." "I'm back. Sorry. Where's Karen?" "Mom's still sleeping." I was surprised again. Sleeping? It was already past 9 a.m. "Did you make breakfast, Lisa?" "No, Sarah did before she went to club activities, but it's always like this. I'm in charge of cleaning up. I see. Good job. Although I praised her, I was shocked. What had Karen been doing all this time? Making the kids do all the housework while she did nothing. These doubts began to surface. Where's Karen sleeping? I'll go wake her up. I asked Robert. Suddenly he became flustered.
She's finally sleeping. It's cruel to wake her up. She's tired from being in a new house. Let her sleep today.
Had he ever shown such consideration for me? I did want him to be kind to Michael's wife, but this seemed like pampering, not kindness. Ignoring Robert, I climbed the stairs to the second floor. Karen, where are you? I called out loudly. Then I heard a noise from our bedroom. With a bad feeling, I hesitantly opened the door. Karen emerged with disheveled hair. Ah, Elizabeth, welcome back. Was she sleeping here? With Robert? My expression must have revealed my doubts. Karen awkwardly explained. I couldn't sleep in my bed, so after Dad woke up, I borrowed his bed. It felt like an excuse. I had sometimes thought they were too close, not just friendly. Maybe I was foolish for never doubting them. I decided not to present the divorce papers I had brought. I realized there was something else I needed to do first.
So, what are you here for? Move your stuff to the shed.
Robert, who had followed me, said in panic. No, I came back to move my things out of the house, not to the shed, I said, taking my clothes and leaving the house. Lisa looked anxious as I left, but I couldn't do anything for her now. Lisa, I'll be back, I assured her, pained by her obedient nod. After leaving the house, I immediately contacted Michael. I knew it might shock him. It could be a misunderstanding, but I couldn't keep silent. Michael seemed shocked over the phone, falling silent. It might be my misunderstanding, but if it's true, it's serious. We can't leave the kids in that house. Sarah, the eldest grandchild, is a middle school student. If she realized their relationship, it could deeply hurt her during these sensitive years.
Okay, let's gather evidence.
Michael agreed. That night, after 11 p.m., I met up with Michael. He had contacted Karen. He told her to come home because it's far from work if she stays at her parents' house. But Karen refused. Why doesn't Michael just commute from there? You can come home only on his days off. Karen and Robert must be thinking they'll have the night to themselves without Michael coming back. We contacted Sarah, the middle school student, and asked her to secretly open the house door for us. She complied, opening the door for us late at night while pretending to go to the bathroom. We entered the house and went into the shed Robert called my room. After everyone went to sleep past midnight, we heard footsteps from the living room to the bedroom upstairs. Michael and I looked at each other, waited for the bedroom door to close, and then quietly went upstairs. Standing outside the bedroom, we heard unmistakable sounds from inside. Staggering, I was supported by a pale-faced Michael. We decided and forcefully opened the bedroom door.
What?
Wow! Karen and Robert, startled, hid under their blankets. Recording a video for evidence, Michael stood by as I said, Do you realize what you're doing? Disgusting! Who should leave this house? Think about it. Wait, it's not what it looks like. Karen protested from under the blankets, but Michael, with a cold expression, kept recording, saying nothing.
Stop the video!
Robert pleaded in panic, but Michael didn't respond, muttering,
Divorce. I won't think of you as dad anymore.
His words were justified. I couldn't consider such people family anymore. Not wanting to wake the children with more noise, we decided that gathering evidence was enough for the night. Michael and I say to them, "Sorry to interrupt." "Continue, why don't you?" we said, leaving the bedroom. Michael sighed deeply, and all I could do was pat his back. The grandchildren were sound asleep in the living room. Neither of us could sleep, nor could we leave the kids and go back home. "You should go home and rest," I suggested, but Michael shook his head, watching the children sleep. The next day, I had Emily pick up the kids. She had hurried back from abroad after hearing from my father that I was kicked out. When she said she would take them to the amusement park, the kids were thrilled. It had been a while since Emily and the kids met, but she, being childless, adored her nephews and nieces, and they were attached to her, so they happily left with her. Left with just 4 of us in the house, we placed the divorce papers in front of Robert and Karen, demanding they sign. Karen began to sob, and Robert looked pale and frozen. "What are you doing? Write it quickly," I urged. Robert pleaded.
I'm truly sorry. The shed thing was a joke, and yesterday I just got carried away.
His ramblings sounded like excuses, which I didn't want to hear.
Who cares about getting carried away? You hit on your son's wife. Disgusting old man.
Michael spat.
And you? Karen, write it now.
Karen burst into tears at his words. I'm sorry. I really regret it. Let's go back home and live together again. But Michael's heart was unmoved. In fact, he laughed and said,
Go back where? You don't have a home anymore.
Karen stopped crying and started trembling.
The house will go back to Mom. It was originally her house,
Michael declared. I smiled at his words. The house Michael had been living in was built on land my father had given to me as a wedding gift to Michael.
I can't let Robert know I gave you the house. He may not be my favorite, but he's your dad. I did this on my own. No need to tell them, Dad had said. Michael and I kept it a secret to maintain Robert's dignity. Michael was grateful and had thanked Dad. Sorry, I can only do this much for my grandchildren,
Dad had said, embarrassed but clearly happy. Such a stark contrast to grandparents who exploit their grandkids. So, the land and the house were in my name. I then revealed another fact Robert didn't know. By the way, the land this house is built on is also Dad's. I'm leaving, so either buy the land or return it as a vacant lot, okay? I said cheerfully, and Robert turned even paler. This land was also given by Dad as a celebration of Michael and Emily's birth. Robert thought I had severed ties with my family, but in fact, Dad was the real owner. There's no way Robert, a stranger now, could use it without any relation. That's exactly what Dad meant.
Elizabeth in a shed? Unthinkable. Take the land back. If they divorce, he has no reason to stay.
Acting on Dad's words, I initiated the divorce proceedings. Taking away the house when you have kids to raise is too harsh. Are you still Dad? Karen started yelling, but she seemed to be misunderstanding something.
What are you talking about? The kids aren't going with you. I'll take custody,
Michael said. What did you say?
You, making the kids do chores and disregarding their feelings won't get custody. They're old enough to have their say. We can take it to court if necessary.
Karen couldn't respond to his words and just looked down. Robert, still overwhelmed by despair, couldn't move. Seeing the two of them like that, Michael and I exchanged glances and smiled. It seemed they had taken quite a hit. Eventually, they signed the divorce papers and we successfully divorced with evidence of infidelity. Michael and I received compensation in the divorce settlements. We reclaimed the houses. Michael's house became a rental property, and my former home with Robert was demolished to become a coin parking lot. Karen returned to her parents' house, where her brother's family lived, likely feeling uncomfortable after her years of slacking. Robert, with his remaining retirement savings, rented an apartment, unbeknownst to him, also owned by us. It would be interesting to see how long he could afford the rent. The grandchildren, who had a great time at the amusement park, returned to my parents' house and slept soundly. With plenty of space, each child got their own room. Although it was out of their school district, they could still attend their original school with an application. They quickly grew fond of my parents, calling them great-grandma and great-grandpa. Our large family made my parents happy. Maybe it was for the best that Michael, the grandkids, and I all lived at my parents' house. Although the household chores increased for me, it wasn't difficult. Seeing the kids play and do their homework gave me strength, and everyone naturally helped out.
We hated being forced to do chores before, but if it helps, Grandma, we want to do it,
they said, which moved me to tears. Helping out should be voluntary, not forced. That's real education. I feel so happy now, buying donuts and sweets with my grandchildren, enjoying them with my parents. This life is a true blessing.
Huh? Why is Kendrick here? A couple walks into the travel agency where I work. The second I turn my cheerful customer service smile their way, my smile freezes. We're going on our honeymoon. Sitting next to the glowing bride-to-be is, for some reason, my own husband, looking as pale as a ghost. What's going on here? I have a lot to say, but a drama isn't suited for the workplace. I hold back my tears and suppress my emotions for the moment. But I make up my mind that their adulterous honeymoon will not have a happy ending. Brace yourselves. I'll make sure your trip is nothing short of hell. My name is Miranda. I'm 26, and I've been dating Kendrick since we were students. Our relationship continued even after we became working adults, and 3 years after graduation, we got married. We transitioned from lovers to spouses and started a new life. At first, living together was exciting and every day was happy, but as we lived together, I started seeing who he truly was. Kendrick had been a bit of a heartthrob since his student days. Even as an adult, he's still a looker. When we go out, women passing by do a double take. As for myself, I've always been somewhat confident in how I look. But after getting married, balancing work and housework, as well as saving for a future with kids, I found little time or money for myself. I worked at a travel agency, and depending on the season or circumstances, working late is not uncommon, so there were times when I couldn't manage household chores perfectly. That's when Kendrick would get annoyed.
Can't use work as an excuse to neglect the house. I'm working too. What's the point of being married if dinner's not ready when I get home?
The man who was once so kind had turned cold, almost as if he were a different person after marriage. Or maybe this was his true face all along. Whenever he got too harsh, I would argue back. That's when he'd say,
"If you can't even handle housework, I don't mind breaking up any time. I'm still popular, you know? I get plenty of offers."
How many times I have cried over his words. Even when I'd rush home, he would decide to dine out, not caring at all about how I felt. Our relationship grew colder in such a household. Then one day, our days off coincided, and we had dinner together for the first time in ages. Eating in silence, Kendrick suddenly spoke up.
"Speaking of which, I got transferred to South Carolina starting next week." I won't be back for a while. Could be a really long time, actually.
South Carolina? Wow, that's sudden. How long will you be gone?
Hard to say. Maybe 6 months or a year. Either way, I plan to enjoy some me time.
Even though Kendrick already acted like he was a free man, his smug smile irritated me to my core. Considering it's him, he might cheat during his business trip. We were already on shaky ground as a married couple, so I didn't voice my concerns. Still, I braced myself for the worst. Little did I know the events that would unfold were beyond anything I could have imagined. A week had passed since Kendrick left for South Carolina. He texted me on the first day to say the move went well, but there were no messages after that. Though I was concerned about him, to be honest, I was quite enjoying my newfound solitude. Coming home to a quiet house was bliss. I never realized how comfortable it is to do chores at my own pace. My co-workers started noticing my upbeat mood, and I felt much lighter. I prefer it this way, with my husband gone on work, as long as he's healthy and bringing in money. It's something I couldn't actually say, so I'd laugh it off. My good spirits continued until my boss offered me an opportunity.
Miranda, you've been doing exceptionally well lately.
Thank you. It's all thanks to the help I get from everyone around me.
We appreciate your contributions too. Actually, another branch nearby is short-staffed. Would you mind helping out for a while?
Absolutely, I'd love to. I was thrilled to be recognized for my work, and even more excited to experience a different work environment. The other location was a bit far from home, but with Kendrick gone, there was no rush to get back. The timing was perfect. I agreed without any hesitation and started helping at the other branch the following week. It was in a large commercial complex near a train station and was busier than my current location, making it incredibly satisfying to work there. One day, a new customer came in. Nice to meet you. We're on our honeymoon. It was a couple. The woman was a bit younger than me, strikingly beautiful, almost model-like. The jewelry she wore was embedded with what looked like expensive gems, hinting at a life of luxury. But what shocked me wasn't her. It was the man sitting next to her. When I saw his face, I almost screamed. I couldn't believe my eyes. The man sitting at the table was Kendrick, my husband. He was supposed to be on a business trip to South Carolina, so why was he here? At first, I thought he might be a lookalike, but when he saw my face, he broke into a cold sweat, his eyes darting left and right. What on earth was going on? I wanted to confront him then and there, but I couldn't make a scene in the shop. I put on my best customer service smile, but inside, my mind was racing. When I glared at Kendrick, he looked away without saying a word. Contrastingly, the woman was all smiles, chattering happily about their honeymoon plans. We haven't submitted our marriage certificate yet, but we're planning to get married this year. We're jumping the gun because we're so eager for our honeymoon. Oh, that sounds wonderful. You look so happy together. Aren't you married too? She asked, pointing to the ring on my left hand. Yes, I am. My husband said he's on a business trip in South Carolina. Who knows what he's actually up to? A side glance at Kendrick revealed he had gone white as a sheet. Still, he avoided eye contact. You've got to trust your partner, right, Kendrick? The woman clung to Kendrick's arm and leaned against him.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure she wants to get back to you as soon as possible, too.
He stammered. Who did he think he was kidding? About an hour later, the two left. I immediately texted Kendrick. Meet me at the local family restaurant tonight. Show up or I spill the beans. Although he'd been out of touch for over a week, his reply came in seconds. Later, at the family restaurant, Kendrick was already there. It's been a while. What are you doing here? This isn't South Carolina.
That bossy tone of yours? What a contrast to my beautiful girlfriend, Kelly.
He looked nothing like the pale-faced man from earlier, sipping his coffee arrogantly.
Didn't expect you to change locations. Were you demoted?
That's not the point. don't we have something serious to discuss? I pressed, and Kendrick let out a dramatic sigh.
Your assertiveness isn't cute. You used to be, but lately, you're lacking in appeal.
He studied me from head to toe, as if comparing me to this Kelly woman.
It was during this time I had a fateful encounter with Kelly.
Excuse me? You do realize you're married, right?
Don't worry, I'm not planning on having an affair. I'll break up with you cleanly, so relax.
What kind of way is that to talk?
Don't make a big fuss just because I'm dumping you. You'll get wrinkles and look even more unattractive. And don't make a scene in front of Kelly, okay? This is work, so act like it.
With those words, he left the family diner without waiting for my reply. I was so angry, I wanted to grab him and punch him right then and there. But I couldn't cause a scene in front of the other customers. Fine, if that's how you feel, I'll give you the best trip ever. I swallowed my boiling anger and vowed to take my revenge. So, what I proposed for them was the nature-filled refreshment tour for newlyweds. It was a relaxing domestic trip to enjoy the beautiful air of rivers and forests. When I sent over the paperwork, "I'm really looking forward to it," Kelly called me, saying so. Fast forward 2 months to the day of the tour. The couple appeared, luggage in tow. I greeted them warmly. "Today, I'll be your tour guide." "Not only did you suggest the tour, you're guiding us? That's wonderful, thank you." Kelly beamed with joy, while Kendrick looked at me suspiciously.
You'll make sure it's a fun tour, right?
"Don't worry, I've prepared thoroughly for today," I responded, smiling the kind of smile I use for work. I had indeed prepared meticulously for this day. I was all set to turn their once-in-a-lifetime honeymoon into an unforgettable tour. "Now, please board the bus for transportation. Please note you'll be sharing the bus with other tour participants." They boarded the bus as I directed. Upon boarding, Kendrick's eyes widened in surprise. "Oh, what a cute couple! Are you on the same tour?" An elderly couple already on the bus waved to Kendrick and Kelly, while Kelly waved back smiling. Kendrick immediately came up to me.
"What's going on here? Why are my parents on this bus?"
Yes, the elderly couple were none other than Kendrick's parents. I had consulted them about his cheating, and they eagerly offered to help me exact revenge. "How about getting on the bus? The tour is just getting started."
"Darn it, this is ridiculous."
Kendrick was seething with anger, but he couldn't lose his cool in front of his clueless girlfriend, so he boarded the bus, his face a mask of pure irritation. Kelly, thinking the older couples she bumped into were just random strangers, continued her cheerful conversation with father-in-law and mother-in-law. "So, you're on your honeymoon. Ah, to be young. What do you like about him?" "Well, he's incredibly genuine. He loves me for who I am, not for my looks or money. He always speaks kindly to me and never lies." "That's great, isn't it? Honesty is so important." "Yes, he's so open with me that it puts my mind at ease." "Good for you. A man who lies is just the worst." While mother-in-law and Kelly chat, Kendrick pretends not to hear and stares out the window in silence. Every time the bus passes through a tunnel, his already tight expression hardens, making him look like livestock being taken to market. As they eat delicious food and look out at the river, Kelly and father-in-law and mother-in-law seem to have become fast friends. All the while, Kendrick's discomfort is palpable, his face increasingly pale. Is it because he's sweating so much that he's thirsty? He repeatedly sips from an empty water bottle. "You look off today. You okay?"
It's nothing. Is this tour over yet? I'd like to get off for a bathroom break at least."
Struggling to keep it together, Kendrick finally asks for help. I respond with a smile. "Just hang in there a little longer. We'll arrive at our final destination soon. Please enjoy the beautiful scenery until then." After about 10 more minutes, the bus finally arrives at the last spot. Staggering off the bus after his energetic girlfriend, Kendrick looks around and is at a loss for words.
Wait, Where are we?
This is a hidden gem, a scenic spot very popular with couples. Our final destination is a highland bridge spanning a large river. With nothing obstructing the view, the river below and the beautiful blue sky can be seen for miles. What a great choice for couples! Let's take a picture together.
No, I'm fine. You go ahead.
Come on, let's go. Kendrick, pulled along by Kelly, hesitantly steps onto the land bridge. He looks down at the river and freezes. You see, Kendrick has an extreme fear of heights. Even shopping on the 3rd floor of a mall and looking down gives him pause. You can imagine how terrified he must feel now. Actually, you can bungee jump from here. There's a superstition that if the boyfriend jumps while declaring his love, the couple will be forever happy. Really? That's amazing! Next to Kelly, whose eyes are sparkling, Kendrick can't even speak. He just shakes his head.
I can't do it. I really can't. Please understand.
Strapped into his bungee jumping harness by the local instructor, Kendrick couldn't help but cry and sniffle.
Forgive me, Miranda.
Who's Miranda? My name is Kelly. She instantly turned serious, glaring at Kendrick. Normally, this would have turned into a big confrontation, but overwhelmed by the fear of bungee jumping, Kendrick started blubbering and spilled everything.
I was just messing around with Kelly. She's just some pretty rich girl. And I was planning to have a little fun and then go back to my life. Why are you so upset about a little cheating?
What? Cheating? What are you talking about? Confused, Kelly listened as I told her everything. That Kendrick was actually married and I was his wife. That Kendrick was a lowlife who only cared about a woman's looks. And that the elderly couple on the tour were my father-in-law and mother-in-law. After hearing it all, Kelly took a deep breath and turned to Kendrick. Is everything they're saying true?
But look at what I'm going through. Don't you think I'm the victim here?
She gently laid her hand on Kendrick's fully secured harness. Answer yes or no. You're married? Yet you were playing around with me? Even promised to marry me?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Well, I don't forgive you. With a smile, Kelly gestured for me to come over. Shall we do this together? Absolutely. We both stood behind Kendrick and gave him a hearty push off the platform.
No!
Kendrick's death wail echoed throughout the canyon. And so, with that grand scream, our newlyweds tour came to an end. Later, Kendrick was shaped with a hefty fine from Kelly, and unsurprisingly, she called off their engagement. Kendrick had quit his job, hoping to live off Kelly's wealthy family, and now that was all out in the open. First order of business, find a job to pay off the fine. To make matters worse, his own family disowned him after the incident, leaving him with no one to turn to. Then he had the audacity to ask me for a reconciliation, but I was having none of it. I also served him with divorce papers, and am pushing a settlement in divorce court, leaving him with debts exceeding $60,000. What kind of miserable life he'll lead from now on is not my concern. As for Kelly, she seemed grateful to me. Thanks to you, I put one over on that idiot. Next time I meet someone truly wonderful, please handle my honeymoon arrangements again. I'll be waiting. And so we both set off on new paths in life.